The topic of this video is entitled Over-Seriousness Kills Self-Differentiation. I have a lot of folks who contact me who are interested in learning more about self-differentiation and a family systems approach to being self and learning to increase your sense of self in a healthy way. And they are always talking to me about how they can improve their self-differentiation. So, first of all, what do I mean by over-seriousness? Over-seriousness is a reactive state when we become reactive, when we become immature, when we become naive, but it's a reactive state in which we enmesh through seriousness and intensity. This lessens our self-differentiation and clouds our self-awareness. It also indicates we're not very self-aware at that time. Recently I was watching the comedy series The Office, and in fact the whole series is based on a back and forth dialogue between Dwight, and you don't have to be familiar with the show, but Dwight becomes over-serious so often, so does Michael, the manager. Many people become over-serious at certain times, and it creates a comedy. And whereas Jim and Pam, who are characters in the show, are not quite so serious about life and are more flexible and are able to stay more themselves and not get caught up in the immaturity and the craziness of the storyline of The Office comedy. And so what happens is, so often people are talking and then someone all of a sudden becomes very serious. And this creates a humorous situation. Well, in real life, if we're the ones becoming serious, it doesn't feel very funny. The person who's become over-serious has become over-serious. And so therefore they don't see the humor, they're not flexible, they're not more loose internally. They've become solid or rigid at some point. And I think this reflects a level of self-differentiation that's lower. It also tends to freeze us up. We tend to become more paralyzed inside and have fewer options emotionally and mentally. Healthy closeness is good. Enmeshment and fusion hinders intimacy and calmness in a relationship system. And this video is about one of those concepts and skills we learn in practicing self-differentiation. It's similar to the confusion skill that I mentioned in the video, and I hope you'll watch it. And I have a video on confusion and how it can be a helpful way to stay self-differentiated. So, why does over-seriousness equal reactivity? And by the way, serious is not a problem. Over-serious is a problem. Certainly if I go into a funeral, I'm not going to be very playful in that situation. I'm going to be more serious or somber. But someone can become so over-serious that, in fact, someone does something funny to kind of break the over-seriousness tone that's felt. The same thing that happens at church, at synagogue, in different places where we're supposed to be serious. If it becomes too serious and something very human happens, then everybody laughs and it breaks that over-serious tone. So why is over-seriousness reactivity? Over-seriousness is too much intensity, which inhibits relationships' fluidity and the healthy relationship dance. In other words, once someone becomes over-serious, it kind of stops the interplay between the two people in a relaxed and fluid way. And that over-seriousness is about our immaturity when we become over-serious. And by the way, this video is about our own over-seriousness. Another video I'm going to do is about how do you deal with someone who has become over-serious? How can you deal with them in a self-differentiated way? In this video, it's how can I understand my over-seriousness and get an idea as to what it means and how to examine it so that I can become healthier and more a sense of self. Why does over-seriousness equal reactivity? Because when we become over-serious, it's like grabbing the lapels of someone else in the relationship. Whoever I'm relating to, it's like grabbing their lapels with my over-seriousness. With our over-seriousness, we miss the process of what's going on in our relationship. And we actually end up focusing on the content of the relationship and not on the process of the relationship and what's going on. For example, when I was a parent and my son was very young, I told him he couldn't go see a friend. He was, I don't know how old, 7, 8, and he wanted to go to his best friend Tommy's house. Well, it was 9 o'clock at night. It was a school night. And of course, he couldn't go see Tommy. We weren't going to call Tommy's parents and say, hey, can Andrew come over and play with you? Certainly it just couldn't be done, and a good parent would not allow that. So I said, Andrew, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that tonight. It's about time for bed. We're not going to have you go see Tommy. Andrew becomes upset, as kids will do. It's appropriate. And he goes, oh, I just hate you, Daddy. You're the worst dad in the world. Now, many parents at that point would become over-serious. In other words, they focus on the content of what Andrew is saying and start defending why they're not the worst parent in the world. Some parents would become overreactive or over-serious and become over-authoritarian. Well, I'm just going to spank you, or I'm going to discipline you harshly for saying those harsh words. Either way is over-seriousness. Then there, I think, is a more self-differentiated way and a less immature way to react to a child who's doing something to try to get you to do something they want to do, which is Andrew's goal. Andrew's goal was not to shame me about being her dad. Andrew's goal was to get me to let him go see Tommy. And so when he said, Dad, I hate you, you're the worst dad in the world, I remember saying, Andrew, I think you're right. Conversation's over. It takes two to argue. And I wasn't going to argue with an 8-year-old about whether I'm the best dad or the worst dad, because that's not even what this whole issue was about. The whole issue was, no, you can't go to Tommy's, and that's all that matters. I'm not going to become over-serious about your pleadings. So, no, you'll just have to go up to bed and just remember you have the worst dad in the world, and hey, there's no other dads available, so I'm your dad, and that's the way we have to deal with it. So becoming over-serious can really cause problems in a relationship, for parenting, in marriages, because the same thing happens in marriages too. How many times do spouses say to other spouses, well, if I had a wife who was halfway as good as so-and-so, and it's just, it becomes something to get someone's button pushed. And in the world of self-differentiation, we don't want to allow our buttons to be pushed. That gives someone else too much power. And when we've grown up in dysfunctional families, we tend to have buttons in which we give our power away. And so with Andrew, I wanted to deal with what was going on, not what was being said. And so my response was about what was going on. In other words, he'd like me to get reactive so that he could win and either go to Tommy's or I would become upset. Well, I'm not going to do either. So I'm just going to agree with him. And that tends to diffuse what's actually going on without focusing on the content. Why does over-seriousness equal reactivity? Because when we become overreactive, we become less aware. And I know in the show The Office, and again, I hate to go back to that if you haven't watched that show, but you've known people like this. Dwight is the one who he's pretty immature emotionally, and he can easily be tricked. He's naive. He's not a dumb man. He's a very intelligent man, but emotionally his IQ is kind of low. And so people can trick him and do things like that. They do that to each other throughout the show. And so, with when Dwight becomes over-serious in a reaction to Pam and Jim, for example, he loses a sense of self-awareness and doesn't realize what he looks like, how he's acting. You can just notice a lack of self-awareness all over. Well, the same is true for us when we become over serious. Think of the parent whose child says, "Oh, I just hate you. I wish I had Susie's mom for a mom." And then your child's mom, or excuse me, your child says this to you, and then you start going crazy and feel insecure and guilty because you're not as good a mom as Susie's mom. And then you start acting outside yourself. And then we stop having self-awareness. That's the problem. And we start looking odd or funny because it's not really us. We'll either overreact and maybe punish too harshly, or we'll go cry off in the corner, and it's just, it really becomes a situation in which we become self-unaware. Why is over-seriousness equal to reactivity? Because we become rigid and inflexible, and we're less open to ourselves and to others, as I mentioned earlier. We really do close down our awareness on what's going on when we become over-serious. So let me give you some examples in which over-seriousness occurs. And by the way, I'm not trying to argue any of the political issues or the social issues that I may bring up. I'm simply giving examples of over-seriousness. Someone can be talking, and today Obamacare or the affordable health care is kind of a hot topic for many people. It divides people because they become over-serious about one side or the other. So just go to your office water cooler, and if someone's saying, I've got a nephew who just lost his health insurance, which by the way I have, and I thought, well, maybe he could get health insurance through the Affordable Care Plan, and I'm just talking out loud, and then someone says, well, oh my gosh, not Obamacare. Well, that's the worst thing that's happened to our country. It's going to destroy our economy, and it's going to destroy our healthcare system. Now, I was simply pondering whether my nephew, it might be something he might look into or not. The other person becomes over serious about that issue and start preaching it, and that over seriousness is a part of reactivity on their part, because I realize they're not being very rational at this point. They're thinking with their emotions, not their thoughts, and they have been caught up in their own emotional thinking process. And so they're not themselves, they're who they think they should be or a cause they think they should have. I wasn't even arguing the cause either way, for or against Obamacare, for or against the affordable health care cost. I wasn't even arguing that. I was just pondering, what if my nephew did X, Y, and Z? And I think that happens in politics, in religion. If you want to find people who become over serious, talk about politics, talk about religion. And I think that's why many people advise, when you have family gatherings, families should not talk about politics or religion. And why is that? Because inevitably a number of people become over serious about it and can't have a discussion about it. They become over serious. Not serious, over serious. And they become rigid. They become either preachy or defensive or reactive, or if I come to this house one more time and hear somebody talk about George Bush, I'm never coming back to this family gathering again. And again, that's reactivity, and then I have to cut off as a result of that, which indicates a low level of self-differentiation, not a higher level. And so we're trying to work towards raising our level of self-differentiation. I think, so there are a number of religious and political issues that can cause reactivity or over-seriousness. The same is true in relationships. We can become very serious about that. For example, a husband is talking to his longtime wife. They've been married 20 years. And he says, my first girlfriend in high school and I went to Kings Island, and we really, really enjoyed it. And the wife says, well, you never invited me to Kings Island the whole time we had been married. Do you identify The husband's making a neutral statement about the past, not that he wants to be with that girlfriend again, just a neutral statement remembering a positive time. The wife becomes over serious about that event, and now she is caught in that over seriousness, and that's her reactivity. Or the classic kind of humorous way to look at over seriousness, it's when somebody says, well, good morning, and another person says, well, what do you mean by that? That's the classic over seriousness. I don't know, all I said was good morning. I meant nothing more than just good morning. They have become over serious. If we become, what do you mean by that? If we're the ones saying, well, you never invited me to Kings Island the whole time we've been married, then we need to look at how over seriousness plays out in our lives. Let me give you one other example. A 62-year-old father tells his 30-year-old daughter, who is divorcing her husband, I want to support you during your hard time. I know it's hard for you, honey. If there's anything I can do, let me know. And the daughter says back to him, all the men in my life abandoned me, starting with you, Dad. Now, do you see any over seriousness there? By the way, Dad has apologized about 10 times for the things that went wrong in their childhood. He's tried to be kind and supportive to his daughter, but his daughter is still caught in that. And so she becomes over serious and can't accept easily the support and love her dad wants to give her right now. So over serious is a real problem, and it indicates an immaturity and indicates some issues that need to be resolved. Let me use the example of the skin. The skin is a good organ to think of how our self should be in terms of a healthy way. The skin should be moist, supple, smooth, flexible. If it becomes hard, brittle, blistered, cracking, dry, solid, then it doesn't function near as well. The skin as an organ needs to be smooth and functional in that way. So does our sense of self. So does who we are needs to be that way, and not become hard and rigid at some point. Because once we become hard and rigid, that's not a healthy biological state, nor is it a healthy emotional state. And that's why when people try to engage me in controversial examples, and people do that all the time, having been a pastor in the past, I have a number of people say, well, what do you think about XYZ? They're always wanting to, and I can tell they've already become over serious. I'm not the final authority on X, Y, and Z. Does it matter what I think about X, Y, and Z? I mean, does it matter about their care or what's going on with them or how I'm helping them? Oftentimes it's an issue they have that they haven't resolved, and they're trying to draw me into it. Do you believe in baptism and that you should do it in this form or that form? Or do you believe, and it's like, why are we talking about this? I didn't bring it up. And why do those doctrinal beliefs, if that's what you believe, that's fine. You don't have to use that as a test to pressure our relationship. It's not necessary. And that indicates to me some immaturity on their part. What I advise people to do is to notice over seriousness in your life and in others. Notice when you become over serious. Resist, own, and resolve your own over seriousness. When you become over serious, begin to identify what you need and want, because often you probably haven't done that. And so over seriousness becomes a problem. Ask yourself, if you want to deal with over seriousness, ask yourself, what would I lose, or what would be the downside of not being over serious about this? What fears would I have? What anxiety would that create? What problems would that cause for me? I know I used an example where, and I didn't share that example, but I might now, an example, because religion is also one of those where people become really very over serious. And you can be talking and just posing the thought of, with all of astrophysics that we know, I just wonder how God fits into that. And I'm just pondering that. And then someone pipes up, well, let me tell you what the Bible says. The Word says, da 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 da, and then they quote scripture and go on. And they become very serious when someone's just pondering openly. And they become serious, and almost it becomes a test of faith for everyone. And again, that's where someone becomes over-serious about a situation. So let me use some examples that I've given you as to how we might take a look at what's behind the over-seriousness. With the daughter and the dad, if the daughter did not become over-serious with her dad, if she were to think about that and go, boy, I really wanted to get upset with my dad, I really wanted to blame him for the past or whatever, and if I didn't say that, if I didn't get over-serious, then I would feel Dad would get away with what he did when I was a child and how he treated me as a parent. There's a clue as to what needs to be resolved in the daughter. Not fixed in the dad, that's for Dad to fix, but what needs to be fixed in the daughter so she doesn't get owned by that, so she doesn't give her power away because of that. Let's look at the Bible example. If the person who's got to quote that scripture and has to preach to everyone about what the Bible says at this moment, just when someone was harmlessly thinking about, the metaphysics of astronomy and physics and God, oftentimes, because I have been that person who has been over-serious about the scripture, about the Bible, and I take a look at, if I didn't do that, if I didn't bring up the scripture and quoted the scripture to everyone, well, I can't let someone not understand what the Bible says, or God would be mad at me, or I would not be witnessing enough to please God. And again, those are my issues that I haven't resolved. God's very, very capable of taking care of his universe. I'm not the one that has to make it all work and then end up alienating everybody in my life by becoming over-serious. The husband in the King's Island example. And so if the wife did not get over-serious, my husband would not know how much I wish he would pay attention to me and treat me in a special way. Again, that's an issue for the wife that she hasn't resolved, and learning how to ask for those needs, working out those wants within her marriage, rather than just becoming over-serious and then causing a breakdown between the two of them in an argument. So, and she also did not feel special or didn't feel like people paid attention to her when she was a child. So that's an old historical thing that she brings to her marriage as well. Let me give you one other example about secrets. Secrets are another way of being over-serious. Secrets are about being over-serious. And why is that? Because if I didn't keep the secret and I shared the secret, I would feel, if anyone knew the secret, I would not be loved, I would not be accepted, I would not be cared about, I would feel abandoned, shamed, or I would feel my shame or feel my guilt, and so I keep this a secret. Then every time that issue arises, we become over-serious. And you've seen that in families before. You know, the no discussion topics that families have? This is a non-discussable. These are the things we can't talk about in our family. Dad's alcoholism, my sister, I'm using an example of a family in which a sister got sexually abused growing up. We don't talk about that because a stepdad did that, so we can't talk about that. We can't talk about Aunt Mary's drug addiction. We have all these secrets that we can't talk about. And so therefore, anytime anything gets near that topic, everyone becomes over-serious. And of course, one of the best antidotes for over-seriousness is playfulness. I didn't mean silliness, I meant playfulness. In other words, I want to stay loose and not caught and stuck and connected. Which is why when Andrew says, Dad, you're the worst dad in the world, I say, you're right. I agree with you. I think it's horrible that you have the worst dad in the world. I'm being playful because I'm not going to get caught in what's going on. If you'd like help with self-differentiation, and if you'd like to learn more about being yourself and staying connected to others, give me a call, use my email address and contact me. You can find contact information on the screen. I do see clients in the office or online, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. Hey, hi everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm a life and relationship coach, and I've been in the people helping business for 45 years or so. And this video is entitled Moving from Cause and Effect Thinking to Process Thinking. I'm doing a brief series. This is number 2. I hope you'll watch number 1, which was my previous video. And I hope that you'll join this YouTube channel. I hope you'll support the YouTube channel by joining as a member for a small amount each month to help bring free videos to this, to the audience and those who want this kind of information. And then also there's a workshop coming up on February 6th, coming up very shortly, 2021. On Saturday, the entire afternoon. You can join me and other participants in that workshop entitled Getting Your Family of Origin Out of You. And I hope you'll join me for that. And you can sign up on the link below. I think there's also might be a link here on the video itself. This particular video, again, is moving from a cause and effect thinking to process thinking. And why is that important? It is important because it gives us more options as to how we can change ourselves in the system and how we can change the relationship system if we can see more and zoom out. This series, the first video was shifting from feelings to thinking, and that's the name of it. Moving from feelings to thinking is the name of the video. This one is moving from cause and effect to process thinking, and then the third one will be moving from a focus on self to a focus on the system. And I want to thank Peter Titleman in his book, The Therapist's Own Family, which is a great family systems book. I think every therapist should read it. So let's talk about moving from cause and effect to process thinking. I think about a situation that I was involved in recently in which a son an adult son, was asked by his alcoholic or narcissistic father to bring his sister, who's also an adult, to live with him because she was under functioning and having trouble with drugs or other kinds of difficulties. And he felt compelled to do that. And so he went and got his sister, and then he, again, was hoping Dad would be supportive because he was supporting his sister. His dad was supporting his sister financially. his dad's a successful man and well-to-do, and so he was able to support his sister, but doesn't support his son, and really never has. He's kind of the scapegoat, over-functioner, and the sister's kind of the golden child, under-functioner. And so Dad said, well, you need to go get her and bring her to your place. And then he wasn't going to help with that. So he gives the son a call. The son feels he needs to overfunction at this point. And then as he complains, well, my dad always dumps on me. My family always dumps on me. And then he always ignores me. He doesn't support me, but he'll support my sister with anything she wants, even if it's not healthy or enables my sister. But he always calls on me, but won't pay for his choices. And so he feels very victimized, and he feels blaming of his father, which in the thumbnail for this video, I show a mallet hitting you on the head, which is the cause and effect thinking. And then in the mallet, I show all the different things that are going into this mallet. It's not just Dad's choices that go into the mallet. It's also the son's choices as well. Because we have an over-functioning son, under-functioning sister, an enabling father who's unhealthy. And again, that's a whole cause and effect way of looking at it. And so he continues to try to get his dad to function and send him money to help support his sister since she's living there. And he ignores him and doesn't send the kind of help that would be helpful for him to take care of his sister, at least for a while, until she can move back home with her mother or whatever plans for the future. And so if we move to a more process thinking of this particular problem, and again, it's easy to blame Dad, feel victimized, and when we're blaming and victimized, we generally are thinking in a cause and effect way. He is doing this to me. I'm hurt, end of story, and that's what's going on. So I either need to change him or I need to change me, but when we're thinking cause and effect, we often want to change the person with the mallet. We want to change that person. And we don't think about changing ourselves because we feel like a victim of the system. Because this is the way the son's always functioned for many, many years. So as we think about this as a process, and let's think through this. We have an alcoholic narcissistic parent who is feeling a considerable amount of anxiety over his golden child daughter, wants her taken care of. He feels anxiety. He shifts the anxiety over to the son by saying, you need to go get her and you need to take care of her till we can figure out something. Even though it costs you money or you have to take care of her, though the dad was taking care of her down in where she was at. And so then he stopped sending that help. He just wants the son to do that. Whereas the daughter's always been dependent on the dad for all of her life and expenses. And the son then is in denial about what he can expect from an alcoholic narcissistic father. He thinks dad should act right. Well, an alcoholic narcissistic dad is not going to act right. To even expect that is unrealistic. Second of all, he's also in denial of his own codependency and his own overfunctioning. Dad will ask or expect and then not give or help. Then that creates lots of anxiety within the son because he's expecting son to do this, and even talks about how it would really be a loving family spirit if you did this. Well, dad doesn't do loving family spirit. The son needs to do a loving family spirit thing. So he's very do as I say, not as I do, which often is the case for narcissists or alcoholics. The son then overfunctions out of his anxiety. He does worry about his sister, but he can't fix her. And he feels pressure from dad to do this, so he's feeling lots of anxiety, and so he overfunctions. He goes and gets her, brings her back, and then she comes there, and dad basically goes, oh, well, there's no hurry to help financially because she's in a better spot. I don't have to worry about her now. Well, he's dropped her off on his son's doorstep, which then does what? Raises resentment and anger in the son for how the dad is treating the son, and also resentment and anger because the daughter is so underfunctioning and hasn't grown up, even though she's an adult, because she's always been babied or the golden child. So she feels entitled. And then when he tries to reach out to dad to try to get him to, hey, can you send me some financial help because you asked me to go help my sister, etc. Oh, yeah, I need to do that. I'll do that. And dad just forgets it. He doesn't care. It's not a big issue. It's not a big concern on his part because he doesn't have the daughter living with him. The son has the daughter living with him. So there's no pressure on him to do anything. The problem has been temporarily solved because the daughter was so underfunctioning, either in drug addiction or problems that she was having, and a very bad boyfriend who was abusive and all of that. So now dad's relieved. Well, she's out of that situation. Hey, problem solved. But it's now solved on the back of the son. And then the son, in his pendulum type swinging that we do as codependents, then either complies to resolve his anxiety. Okay, I'll go get my sister, and that will resolve the immediate concern or problem. But then there can be moving back to the other swing of the pendulum, where we then feel angry, resentful, or we want to blow up with dad to try to get him to change and to be supportive of what he's asked me to do, or the son to do. Unfortunately, this pattern reinforces the dad to continue to do this because he knows his son will always give in to that underfunctioning, and he will overfunction. The son will overfunction. And it just tells him that's going to keep happening, and that he can be okay with asking for these things. He can tolerate the compliance. Dad can tolerate the anger or resentment. Because the one thing he doesn't have to do in this scenario is change himself. He doesn't have to change himself if we're just swinging back and forth. And I think that happens with parenting as well. When you have a child, and we'll either let it go or ignore a problem with a child, or we'll become angry and upset with a child. Many times a child will say, I can accept either of those options as long as I don't have to change. Just because dad yells or just because mom puts me in a corner, I can deal with that and I'll keep doing my behavior because I can tolerate their swings. And I know they're going to swing, so I don't need to change because they haven't been definitive or put their foot down and let me feel the great part of the consequences. They feel the consequences. Mom and dad for the son, not in this instance, but if you have a child, we feel the consequences. We're upset with their behavior. What we want to do is shift that to where I'm not upset, but now you're going to be upset with the consequences of your behavior. So I want to shift that to them rather than me being the one upset. Okay, well then we have certain punishments or consequences that will happen in which they feel uncomfortable. You don't get to visit Tommy's house. You don't get to watch TV. So you feel the unhappiness rather than me feeling the unhappiness for your behavior. So back to our father, son, daughter scenario. And again, the daughter's a golden child, and dad's always preferred her over the son. Doesn't care much for the son, but he's the good overfunctioner. And he's not done bad things, but he's scapegoated, and it becomes a real problem. And then he gets the expectations to take care of everybody. And dad looks at the daughter as, oh, that's my golden child, I need to take care of her, to the exclusion of everybody else. So how is this a problem when we think about cause and effect thinking to process thinking? When we have cause and effect thinking, it's easy for us to focus on the mallet. Dad's doing something to me. Sister is doing something to me. It's easy to stay zoomed in that cause and effect type of thinking. But then who am I leaving out in the functioning when I zoom into the cause and effect thinking? I'm leaving out my functioning and my choices and decisions in that. I'm just a victim. It's just happening to me. And now I'm mad and angry about it. And then that leads to blaming. If only they would do this. If only dad would do that. If only my sister would grow up and go get a job or go to school or something. Do something healthy. If only thinking comes in and blaming. Process thinking focuses on the what versus the why. What is going on? And when I was trying to describe the anxiety as it flowed down through all of these folks, and I could add the daughter and her anxiety too, but as I talk about that anxiety, I'm talking about what's going on, not necessarily why are they doing it. They are doing it because they're out of their anxiety. That's the way they've learned to do it, and probably the family has learned to do it for generations. Because dad grew up in an abusive home. He may have been a protector of his sister growing up. And so now he's going to protect his daughter. And that comes from his past, and he feels really anxious when his daughter is under functioning. And then that anxiety gets pushed out to daughter, to son, and all of this chaos then ensues. And what we often miss in cause and effect thinking is my role in the process, my functioning in the process. We stay focused on sister, dad, and blame them for my discomfort versus all the interactive chain of events, or as I talk about, the anxiety hot potato that gets passed back and forth that keeps everybody functioning as they always have. And I want to get rid of the hot potato. And the hot potato is that anxiety that propels me and compels me to overfunction, underfunction. And so that's where differentiation or detachment really helps us to grow, because then we're not just a victim of that hot potato going all around the system. And we begin to see how we fuel this interaction. And so what are the benefits of thinking this way, in a process way versus cause and effect? We see more, and so we zoom out so we can see more of what's going on. We also see more ways to alter the process. Because in any one of those steps that I described of that anxiety coming down from daughter to dad to son, we can do a block of that anxiety at that point if we're willing to do the work. And we focus on us as a means of change versus blaming, triangulating. Oh, I'll go tell somebody how awful this was. You don't know, my dad's crazy. My sister's crazy, da-da-da-da-da. Well, yeah, and you get all of their craziness aimed at you. It also empowers us to interact with greater calmness. If we see the system, it empowers us when we calm down and go, wait a minute. What am I feeling anxious about? What am I worried about? I need to work on that. Because that will help me to be an adult that makes intentional choices for me and for them in a healthy way. For example, one example might be, okay, Dad, knowing this is the way Dad operates, I will have, she can come and live with me for 1 month. And then after 1 month, she's either going back into the same situation she was in, or she can go live with Mom. That's my boundary. So I'm giving, but I'm not totally surrendering to whatever Dad wants and his neglect and his lack of help, which we already know is probably coming because we know him, though we tend to be in denial about that. And so that greater calmness helps us to use process thinking better. It helps us to intervene better and to make different choices. Because I might have said another choice we might have, instead of just being anxious when Dad calls, because he's bringing the anxiety to you, is to go, I'm going to stay calm. It sounds like my sister needs to go live with Mom. Why don't you either fly her there, give her a bus ticket, and let her go live with Mom? That would be the best thing. Because in the back of my mind, which I'm not saying, is that this isn't going to work out well. He's not going to support me. He's just going to dump her onto me, and I'll have to take care of her. And this is going to be a problem. And I can't fix her anyway, and she's not looking for help. She's never had to look for help. She's been enabled, entitled, coddled, and been the golden child, and not had to grow up. Well, now, am I supposed to grow her up? Am I supposed to parent her now? And it becomes a real problem. And so again, it helps us if we can learn to look at things in a process way versus a cause and effect way. And I think that there are some books by like Harriet Lerner, The Dance of Anger. And her books start with the word dance. Because instead of cause and effect, which is A causes B, she talks about it being a dance that is a process, the dance of anger, which has to do with women, females, and their mothers. Though it's very helpful for men as well. The dance of connection, the dance of intimacy, the dance of fear. And she uses the word dance because it is a systemic problem, not just a cause and effect problem. I want to thank you for listening today. Please join this YouTube channel, support our channel, sign up for the workshop on February 6th, Getting Your Family of Origin Out of You. And again, you have a great day and be wise. Hey, hi everybody. I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes, see if some people join me for this live. It's another one of those short lives I wanted to do this week. But I think I might go ahead and get started, and maybe some people will join us here. And at least I know there'll probably be some people who will be watching it after the fact. This live is entitled Building a Strong Sense of Self After a Dysfunctional or Toxic Childhood. And I thought that would be a good topic for a brief talk tonight, for me to do a little talking. And I do apologize to anyone who is hoping we would give some heads up for the live broadcast, and we will be doing that. We just couldn't get that done today. So again, if you happen to miss this, then you can always watch it after it goes up live, or goes up as a recording. Building a strong sense of self after a dysfunctional or toxic childhood. I want to welcome you to my live today. I want to thank you for joining me. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm here to share with you how to heal from trauma of growing up in a toxic family and build a strong, true self. And I think that's often what we get robbed of in growing up in dysfunctional families is having a strong and true self. That gets pushed down, that gets roughed up, that gets abused, that gets negated, that gets ignored, that gets punished. And so it is not easy for us as children when we grow up in dysfunctional families to develop that strong, true self. I don't think it's too late or ever too late to develop a strong, true self. So I tell people this all the time. And over the past 45 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world who've grown up in narcissistic, alcoholic, abusive, or emotionally immature families or households. If you're someone who can relate to this, then I hope this live stream will be helpful for you. The title of this live stream is Your New Road to Self, which is also the name of my new 6-week self-paced online program. I want to help you on your journey towards self-differentiation, self-healing, self-growth, and this program that I have developed is a culmination of my 45 years I've put into this program that will be starting very shortly. And I hope you will go to the website or a link below and check it out. There are plenty of extras and gifts and things that are going along with the program. And I really think if you've ever thought about learning about self-differentiation and learning about relationships and what's going on in your life, this is the program for you. And if you want to become more of a true self, your real self. Growing up in a toxic family can leave you feeling lost, helpless, and disconnected from ourselves, certainly. You may have developed a pseudo-self based on the opinions and expectations of others, including your family members. You may feel like you have to put on a facade to fit in, or that you have to constantly seek approval or validation from others. And all of that is the work of the super self in us. Excuse me, the pseudo self. I'm sorry, that's our pseudo self adapting to others to be a self. If you're not happy, then I'll try to make you happy so I can be happy. But that is a pseudo-self way of living when we do that. Often we talk about the Wi-Fi system, and I talk about that often in the family and how to break free from it. And in my program, I talk about this as well and go into great depth. Dysfunctional families are like cults. Everyone follows the system subconsciously. It can be difficult to break free from this super self, this family super self, but it's not impossible. If you can recognize it, see how you're functioning in it, you can begin to find new ways to do a new you. And I think for me, those ways were not available. Nobody was teaching much of those ways back when I was in the beginnings of recovery, and then got hooked up with a family systems approach, and I've never been the same. And I did not even totally fully believe everything I read until I did it. And I realized how much it had a transforming effect on me. I certainly had tried many, many different other ways. The super self, or the family hypnosis, or family trance, was needed when you were an infant, or else you could become psychotic. If we don't have that super self, if we don't have that enmeshment when you're an infant, it's real problematic if you don't. If you continue in that same hypnosis and family trance on into adulthood, then you're going to have problems. And then you'll become psychotic in another way. You'll break down and have a nervous breakdown. As you grow up, we need to become more independent and be our true selves. This is no different than an embryonic cell or an unspecialized cell. In dysfunctional families, we are specialized people. Then we are unspecialized people, then we become a specialized person, our true or real self. So we start out kind of undifferentiated and kind of unspecialized. We're an embryo. And I realize we are unique in that way, but then we become even more unique, and then we become even more specialized. And when I say specialized, I mean more of a sense of self. That's when we become more specialized. I get to know me. Well, if you grew up in a dysfunctional family, that was probably not taught very well for you and was probably strongly discouraged because generally dysfunctional families tend to lean towards enmeshment, codependency, and those kinds of problems rather than how can we help you be your own person with our support, your own wants and needs with some appropriate age-appropriate guidance, with, and that kind of balance, rather than, well, you just be the family and then you'll be fine. Just do everything you've learned and then everything will go fine. Well, it doesn't. That's part of the problem. Family enmeshment wants you to stay childlike and glued emotionally to the family. They do not want you to specialize and become a true self apart from them. And that's what cells do. You will end up specializing, and there may be different chemicals, hormones, or whatever that pass between cells, but they still have an outside to them. They still have their own sense of self and function as that kind of cell. Well, we want to be able to do the same thing, and we want to be our own selves and our own cell. But always knowing, just like all cells are still connected, but we want to be connected in a healthy way. And we have the choice to not be connected in an unhealthy way. We have that choice as adults. Let me check real here. Let's see, I wanted to, in a minute I was going to answer a couple of questions. And certainly this is about getting your core identity. And see, I don't want my core identity to be the family of origin core identity. And that's the Wi-Fi, the hypnosis, the programming, all of that comes with it. And when I talk about that, and I think as you work with this, and as I work with those in my program, and to help them to understand, once you start to get it, you're going to start seeing it everywhere. And you're going to start sensing and feeling how you function in this system. And then you'll have a little more objectivity and go, oh, this doesn't feel like the real me. This feels like what I'm supposed to do, not what I choose to do or want to do, or would be healthy for me, healthy for them. This doesn't feel like that. And so you'll begin to recognize that more and more. And I give some exercises and examples and go into depth more in the program about how do you recognize that? How do you recognize your own super self? How do you recognize your own family trance? Do you know what your family trance would be like? And again, what's hard is, if you're in a trance, how do you see you're in a trance outside the trance? And that's the work we have. It's not that it's impossible. It's not even that we have to make that big a change to make a big difference. But you do ask for people to think outside the way they think about everything now. Because the way you think everything now is full of family trance, family dysfunction, family assumptions, family expectations, family normalcy. In other words, if I've been getting mad for the last 60 years, or let's say 40 years, and all I do is get mad, and I was the mad guy growing up at home, let's say, if that was my role. It wasn't, but that we could have that role. And I'm the angry son. That when someone is angry, it's hard to help them to see how that anger plays a role in the family system. They're just thinking, I'm angry because you did something I didn't like. And so they're thinking still inside the box, trying to understand their anger. It's when you can step outside the box, which is what this program I hope will help people do, and look and go, oh, that's why I'm getting angry. That's why I get angry. It's not because they're just goading me or they're bugging me or criticizing me. It's not because of that, because I could ignore all that. That doesn't even have to matter. I see it's because I need to function this way, play this role, be the angry one, so that nobody has to change. Everybody stays the same. And the family is always looking for that homeostasis. Even though it's a dysfunctional homeostasis, they want to keep that homeostasis, equilibrium, always there, so nothing changes it too much. Keep the, even if they're bad. Known misery is better than unknown joy or success. And I don't know if you've ever thought of that, but most of us will choose known misery because we don't want to risk maybe it'll be worse, when actually maybe it'll actually be better, and that we have to think outside of this misery box to even get to something better. Because the misery box is what's keeping us right here in everything we think, feel, believe, say, do. So, in truth, in a dysfunctional family, you're never allowed to be your own person. You're expected to play a certain role in the family. You are expected to play that role, to follow certain rules and expectations, and to never deviate from them, and have certain emotional and mental reactions. And I think of that as kind of my subjectivity. I need to look at the world through the glasses of my family. That's what we have learned. And we were issued those glasses, and you are never to take those off, nor put on any other glasses. What I do in my program is I want to help people put on some new glasses. Then they'll be able to see far more than they ever thought they could see. This expectations from the family that we have certain emotions, reactions, thoughts, beliefs, programming, this can be suffocating, and it can prevent you from truly exploring who you are as an individual. Because what I hear people often ask me, and this is kind of an interesting question, they're inside the box of their family dysfunction. They're operating in the box, which means everything you do, see, feel, think is affected by your growing up and also how you're functioning even now. And so when I ask them, who are you? Who is the real you? If you're inside the box, how are you going to answer that question? I'll tell you what I did. I many times thought I was being the real me. But what I didn't see was I was being, quote, the real me, end quote, inside the family dysfunctional box. And so if I'd either become victim-y or become Viking-like. So I'd be, oh, poor me, I'm being mistreated. Or now I'm going to get reactive and just really tell somebody off. And so which is the real me? Giving in or telling somebody off? Which is the real Jerry? I believe neither one is. But that's the two choices I'd have inside the box. That's why that's so critical. Those are the only two choices I'm going to be seeing, because I'm using the family's way of looking at my problems through their eyes. So I'm going, oh, well, I either need to just give in or I need to put up a ruckus and a revolution. But neither one is true maturity and true health. And so that's why I like to help people. Let's start to learn out here who this person may be in here. But let's get some objectivity so we can help you get there so you can be truly you. Because if I neither was the victim nor was the Viking, then what would be a true self position? What would be an adult, real Jerry position at that point? Well, I have my own criteria for what you need those C options to be. Adult, out of your adult, mature, calm, rational, not overly feeling, not in this situation. There are other places for feelings, but not in terms of guiding my thoughts. That's not the best time to use feelings. And that I accept that they may not change, but I also have boundaries that I can put into place if they don't. And I think that's more of an option C than A or B, victim, Viking. They're just making me miserable, I'm the victim. Or now I'm going to rant and rout, have a tantrum, yell and scream, tell them everything I always wanted to tell them for the last many years. And I'll tell you, it doesn't go anywhere. It just, I mean, it could make things worse. It could traumatize everybody. And I'm not saying that your feelings or your problems wouldn't be traumatizing for them. It might, but that's why I'm one of those that go get your traumatizing feelings, anger, rage, worked out with a professional, a friend, a pastor, a coach, therapist. Work on those things there so that you don't need to confront your family and you can be you with your family, which could include, boundaries, for sure. So I'm not saying no boundaries. I'm just saying I just haven't found if I get loud and strong enough, that gets everybody's attention. It may get everybody's attention for a short time, but I'm not sure that it's going to change the emotional field and the emotional process in the family. It's actually probably going to be more of a boomeranging effect rather than actually changing that. One of the ways, and I'll just mention it here, I've got a large segment on it in the program. One way to work on self-differentiation is to master the art of asking self-focused questions instead of other-focused questions. One of the things we learn inside the family crucible, where we all get ground in there like a mortar and pestle, for a pharmacist. One of the things we learn in that box is that we always tend to go towards the quick fix, blame, formulation of the problem. We don't think systems, we think linear. A causes B causes C. Boom, end of question. We don't see A fuels B, B fuels A fuels C, and C fuels A, and A fuels B, and it's all a feedback system going on all the time. And one example, so if we can focus on ourselves instead of others, it may feel unfamiliar and uncomfortable at first. For example, instead of asking the question, how can I get my sister to stop guilting me? How can I get my mom to stop shaming me? How can I get my dad to stop being angry with me? Ask yourself a more self-focused question. All of those were other-focused questions. They were focusing on other people. What is my reactivity when my sister attempts to guilt me? What do I do to regulate me? Not what should she do to stop guilting me? What do I do to stop the guilt? What is my reactivity? What is my self-regulation? And how do I function when my sister tries to make me feel guilty? This shift in focus can help you start to detach from the family super self and focus on your own growth and healing. It's important to remember that the journey towards self-differentiation isn't linear. It's just not A to B, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then we're all done. I wish that was the case. I would have liked that. It's not a linear journey. There'll be setbacks along the way. It's essential to be gentle with yourself and to seek support when needed. You don't have to do this all alone. It isn't done overnight. If you just keep at it, you will find the benefits growing and growing. But breaking free from this family super self isn't easy. It requires a great deal of self-awareness, courage, and a willingness to change the status quo for yourself. You're not even trying to change the status quo for everybody else. The worst thing you can do is try to fix the family. The best thing you can do is fix yourself in the family. Now, if you have to go no contact because the family is abusive or too toxic, certainly those are exceptions. But finding yourself while being connected to the family but still being the adult you is huge for life and for how you will see things. It requires a great deal of self-awareness, courage, and a willingness to change the status quo. It means facing your fears and taking risks, even if it means going against what you've learned from your family. And it certainly probably will go against what your family has taught. It also means accepting that not everyone in your family may be supportive. But I don't have to tell everybody that very much. Most of them know that's probably not the case. Except many people in recovery are waiting on their family to grow up, waiting on their family to get in recovery, don't wait. There's no need to wait. You just keep working on being you, a healthy you, a recovered you. And again, so many people, or I know there was a monk story that talked about a novice who came to him and said, "How can I evangelize the world?" And the older monk told him, "Find salvation for yourself, and 1,000 will come to know their salvation." And I think that's true in terms of finding yourself first, and it will affect many systems. And affect everything that you will have be connected to. But as challenging as it may be, the rewards of breaking free from the family super self are immeasurable. You will no longer feel trapped and suffocated by your family's expectation. You'll have the freedom to explore who you are as an individual and to pursue your own dreams and your own goals. You'll also be able to build a healthier relationship with other people based on mutual respect and genuine connection. And perhaps most importantly, you'll be able to develop a stronger sense of self-worth and self-esteem, which can help you navigate life's challenges with greater resilience and greater confidence. Actually, I found a lot of people, when they really do work on their self-differentiation and they're growing in a sense of self in a family systems type of way, that many times they become healthier. They become more true to what they really want in life and what they would choose, not what everybody else would choose. So, if you're ready to break free from the family super self and embark on a journey towards healing and self-discovery, I encourage you to check out my new 6-week self-paced online program. The modules are good-sized modules. So it's not just a little 15-minute talk and you've done, there's a lot of talking in there. You can take it a piece at a time at your own pace. Your new road to self. In this program, I share decades of experiencing helping people heal from the trauma of growing up in a dysfunctional family and provide practical guidance and support for your own journey towards greater self-awareness and self-differentiation. I know there have been some comments. I'm not sure I have caught everybody's. If someone had a question you'd like me to answer, I would consider doing that. And I'm so glad some other people got to join us tonight because the time is a little different. Tonight, I wanted to do it at a little different time. I'll probably be doing another live tomorrow as well. Oh, thank you. You like my shirt? I really like this shirt. This is one of my favorites. It's just seems like a happy shirt. I don't know. I like it. And I've got this yellow sweater that can kind of go on top of it. And so if you get chilly, you can put a yellow sweater on there. And I think the SH, I see your comment there, and I think that's a great, it's really powerful if we can, she mentions, or he mentions, he's the persecutor when, I had it right there, when I realize that it helps me remove mentally, emotionally, and watch the circus go by. That's what we want to learn to do, to watch the circus go by. I want to be able to, and I want to be able to observe rather than take in all the emotions, thoughts, and all those things. I don't want to absorb all of that from the family or from others. I want to observe what's going on. And well, I appreciate that you saw my other video on other focused versus self-focused. I just think so many times we don't even realize how other focused we are. I've even had recovery people come to me and go, well, I'm not really codependent. I had a messed up childhood, or my father was an alcoholic, or, they'll say they had dysfunction. There was no doubt. Maybe there was some physical abuse. But when it comes to, so they'll say, I'm not codependent,